Good morning, my dear friends. We have touched upon the concept of globalization in the last class. Today, I will be introducing to you a very important concept, the concept of Americanization, and I would be drawing out the comparative analysis of how the debate of Americanization has always been looked upon in relation to the debate of globalization. Globalization has more often than not been talked about in terms of Americanization, or rather, the words have been interchangeably used. But we will try to draw some difference between these two terminologies. We'll look at how globalization is not Americanization and how Americanization might be globalization at some points or the other. Now, this debate has been there since the time that we have been using the word globalization. This is a serious debate, and we all know that America, as the largest influencer of global popular culture, has had a very important role to play in the concept of globalization. So let us look at this debate of Americanization versus globalization. Now, this argument of that the world is becoming an American global village has been there, as I said, from the beginning of the concept, beginning of the creation of this concept of globalization. Now, what does it signify basically? What is the understanding with which we interchangeably use these two words? Is that it shows the growing clout and effect of American brands, American popular culture in our lives, in the lives of people in the third world. So Hollywood films play a very important role in globalization. Uh, Concepts such as MTV, concepts such as American channels, CNN and other have played, Coke, Pepsi have played a very important role in the globalization of American culture. But what is this argument that equates globalization? This argument actually is equating, you have to understand, globalization as the successful global imposition of American culture. So it is at the very base of this argument lies the fact that Americanization is being equated with globalization. American culture and its imposition throughout the globe is being taken as globalization. The other way of looking at it is that the success of US capitalism now is equivalent to the cultural and commodities based idea that imposes American way of life. Now, whether be it in Afghanistan or be it in Iran or be it any other country of the world, US capitalism has pervaded all walks of life, even be it the most communist of the countries. US capitalism then is equated, there is this tendency to equate American capitalism to the successful consumption of American capital goods and commodities. Now, this economic success is equated with a cultural and a commodity based idea. So, the selling of an American commodity, the selling of American goods across the world, be it a goods, be it a bullet or a tank in a war-torn Iraq or Iran, or be it selling Toyota cars to the ISIS in Syria, this is an imposition of the US capitalist agenda. Now, this imposition of the US capitalist agenda is considered in this argument equivalent to the imposition of American culture itself. Uh, but let us look at some of the basic problems that are there in equating globalization as Americanization. Let us look at some of these arguments. Let us look at some of these problems that we have, basic theoretical problems that we have with this argument. Now, the first problem, let us look at it. Now, Americanization assumes economic success as cultural imposition. Now, this is the base of all this argument which equates Americanization with globalization. That Americanization is the economic success of a US capitalism. Is the economic success, and this economic success is cultural capitalism. So it is equating economics on the one hand, and it is equating it with cultural imposition. So economic success is equal to successful cultural imposition. Now, you might as well argue, like for example, a success of Hollywood films across the globe might also be considered as a cultural imposition. Whereas we know Hollywood films are part of the US capitalist agenda. But according to this argument, success in the economic sphere equals success in the cultural sphere. Now, this is a very homogenized or a flattened out understanding of culture. This is almost like a causal effect relationship, that if movie happens, cultural imposition happens. A success of American food happens, fast food happens, so burger is sold, cultural imposition project is complete. You are being sold a hamburger, you are being sold a hot dog, the cultural imposition project is complete. Now, this is that simplistic causal effect. So I pay for a American good, I pay for an American community. That's the economic side of the argument. What I take back is the cultural value. But culture always is not that homogenic an idea. It's not such a flattened out idea. Culture is not a flattened out idea like economics, like if you pay money and you take culture. It's not as simplistic as that an argument. So there are some inherent problems with this first proposition. And thus, when I let's say buy when I buy a burger, do I really buy into the American way of life? When I watch a Hollywood film, do I really become in some ways American? When I listen to American pop music, do I really become a cultural slave to the American idea? Now, this is where we have to look at this concept a little more critically rather than this causal effect thing where I buy and it happens. So it's almost like, somebody comes and pushes an injection to me. I pay the money, somebody pushes a vaccine to me, and I'm Americanized. It doesn't happen so simplistically, and that's all we all understand. Now, the sociologist Herbert Skinner was one of the proponents of this argument of capitalism equating to the cultural relationship, capitalism and cultural relationship. He claimed that the ability of the American companies, and remember, this was the time when the American industrialization was at its peak. We are talking of the 70s and 80s. The space war was happening. The Cold War was at its height. There were a lot of competition between the Russia, the erstwhile Soviet Union, and America. And America was reaching at the peak of its abilities. So around this time, he was looking at, and you see, moon has already been colonized by then. We have already reached moon. We had images of man landing on moon. So space had already begun to be colonized. So here he was talking about, Skiller, the ability of American companies to successfully unload commodities around the globe, and he says this is producing an American global capitalist culture. So you have to understand this argument in light of the time that Skiller was also talking in. He was living in an era when the American hegemony, the spread of the American hegemony was very important to survival of the American capitalist way of life, because two ideological poles were fighting for the dominance of the world order. Soviet Union versus America. The Cold War was at its height. So you have to understand that Skiller's argument would actually come from that understanding of culture, that the more you produce in the America was the production hub of the world. It was one of the fastest growing capitalist nation. It was producing anything and everything. It was supplying most of the ammunitions for war happening around the globe. That is just one of the industries. It was supplying Hollywood movies to keep people entertained all across the globe. So Skiller's argument was that the American companies were successful in unloading all of these goods in these commodities that America was producing all across the globe. So, right from Bhutan to America, Bhutan to Afghanistan to Iran to Iraq, all nations were flooded with American goods. You have to understand, China wasn't a capitalist producing nation. So, it was all American. The American goods were dominating the global market. So Skiller's opinion, you might say Skiller was right in a way, probably in his own time that he was living in, that he understood capitalist culture as the byproduct of selling goods and commodities across the globe. So as you sell goods and commodities, so you spread your own capitalist. So he called something called the American global capitalist culture. So this is a very simplistic argument from Skiller, an argument which would legitimize the economic argument, that when you have an economic relationship, you have, and so this is actually about the flow of ebb of culture from the Western world to the other part of the world. Now, one basic problem with this assumption is commodities, as I've already mentioned, actually, commodities are the same as culture. Now, this cannot be such a simplistic argument. There has to be more to this argument, because it's almost like it was so easy to predict, because if you sell commodities, you sell culture. It was almost like an argument where if you can predict the relationship of business, you can predict the relationship of culture as well. So how much business am I doing with America also tells me how much cultural proliferation of America has happened in my country. So if that argument is right, so we know why Cuba, for example, would not want to do business with America, because if Cuba allows business of America to happen in Cuba, it will be cultural proliferation of America. It was that kind of an effect that actually made many of the countries to stop their borders, to block their borders from American goods. So countries such as Iran, North Korea would not allow American goods to enter into their borders. But if we equate this cultural meaning, this cultural imposition, and equate it with economics, as has been done by Skiller, this actually provides a definition of culture which is very impoverished. The definition of culture has been reduced to the bare essence of its commodities. Culture no longer is independent from economy. First of all, culture then no longer is independent of goods. Culture no longer has a meaning outside of the economic world. Culture no longer is an independent variable, it is a dependent variable of the economic world order. Now that is a very, very problematic assumption. It's an assumption which causes a lot of problem with people who have been working with the concept of culture. Now, people in the fields of anthropology and cultural studies have been doing a lot of studying on culture, and culture is not such a simplistic one unidimensional meaning making process. Culture is a very problematic is a theoretical understanding of a very problematic nature. So market penetration cannot be simply be regarded as ideological penetration. So which America would want everybody to believe that your market penetration is equivalent to ideological. So if you deal with America, you are saying yes to the American worldview. You are saying you are negating the Soviet worldview. If you are dealing with American business, you are saying no to communism. You are saying no to the communism of Russia. So this was a very problematic meaning of culture that this first assumption puts forth, the Skinner's assumption puts forth. The second problem with Skinner's argument, the first was this. The second problem with Skinner's argument, which is again based on the idea of that when we say imposition of goods and commodities equates culture, we are then again understanding culture from a point of view that we are injecting culture to the other side who are supposedly weaker and passive. Now, consumers are taken to be passive receivers of cultural commodities, passive receivers of cultural goods and commodities. So, it's almost as if the consumers around the world, consumers of American goods and commodities around the world, are passive consumers who take on meaning in a very singular way, what the Americans determine it to be. Now, uh, I'll tell you a very important few researches that have been done in the America itself. There was two sociologists, Tamar Liebs and Eliu Katz. Katz and Liebs actually did a study, which was a study they did on 2-3 countries, including Israel and Morocco and Japan, where they were studying this soap opera called Dallas. Now, Dallas was one of the most successful soap operas of the 1990s coming out from America. So, American television, it was almost like the peak of the American television programming. So, they wanted to understand. Now, Dallas was being screened across the world. So Dallas was being was success in countries such as Israel, as far as Japan, and of course in America, because it was a local programming in America. So what they did is they wanted to understand how this cultural commodity is received by the so-called passive consumers of the other countries. How did they understand Dallas? What was their frame of reference for this particular soap opera? Now this is very interesting because according to Skiller's argument, commodities have singular meanings and they are just being injected to the passive consumers. So this study was an attempt to understand whether the frame of reference and understanding by the consumers in different locations is the same as what an American audience would understand Dallas to be. Uh, Now, one significant difference that this framing discourse gave up, the interpretation of the program gave up, was interesting. Now, for example, in Israel, when they were doing the study in Israel, they did it among various ethnic groups in Israel. Let's say the Moroccans in Israel. They did it among the Arab Israelis. They did it among the immigrant Russians who had come and settled in Israel. So there were various groups in Israel that they did, and also among the Japanese in Japan. So the immigrant Russian group, for example, framed Dallas as just another propaganda tool of the Americans. Now, this is their frame of reference. Whereas the Arab Israeli people, Arab Israeli Jew, looked at it from the frame of reference of morality. So they were more concerned with the concept of American morality into their lives. The Moroccans looked at it, for example, from a point of view of social realism. For them, it was a new reality. How people would marry each other, how they would marry people beyond their class. So, if middle class person is marrying into a higher middle class in the soap opera, for Moroccans, that would be the frame of reference. They would be looking at from the angle of social realism, how people react in their social orders and how they reinforce or these ideas. So what I'm saying is each one of these categories of people who have studied during this study received Dallas in ways which would be wildly unimaginable by the producers of the show. The producers of Dallas no way could have imagined the way in which Dallas would be received across the world. Uh, so the involvement with the soap opera by these individual groups is something which is not homogeneous. The messaging is not homogeneous. It's a message which is talking about the pluralism of decoding. So each group is decoding this cultural commodity and goods in their own distinct manner, and this is the beauty of this argument then. So Skinner's argument falls flat that the commodities have singular meanings and they are just transported into the consumers. But as we find from this study of cards and labor that cultural commodities are not singular. Cultural commodities have meanings which are heterogeneous and which determine which also bring into play the pluralism of the meaning making process, of the decoding process. So this is a very interesting concept that we have to understand while we are negating this Skinner's concept. So people as passive consumers of cultural meaning, which flow directly from the commodity they consume, is an idea which has to be taken with a pinch of salt. It is an idea which uh, Skiller argued, but we see in the real world which doesn't happen. Commodities and culture are not singular in the meaning making process, they can be framed differently by different groups of people. Now, this is one of the first problems with Americanization being equated with globalization. Now, the second problem. The second problem is talking about cultural Americanization uh, in terms of the concept of foreign. Now, let me explain this in detail. See, cultural Americanization talks about the export of commodities and goods to foreign consumers. To export is an idea which is based on the idea of the foreign and the local. So local is America and they are sending out goods and commodities. So there is the concept of the foreign is a very limited. It is based on the idea of what you call as national difference. So each one of us constitute a different nationality to which the cultural Americanization pervades that boundary. So if let's say I am from India and we are from India, so we constitute a local. It's a so this local is a national difference. So Americanization determines each one of us as Indian. It does not determine each one of us into other categories. So national differences constitute the criteria of cultural Americanization. So it's American versus Indian, it's American versus Japanese, it's American versus Russian. So it's in terms of national boundaries. Are you getting the point? So this is there can be a problem with this differentiation. There can be a problem with this equation. What is the problem? The problem is, what can be this national difference can also be a question of, within the national there can be concepts of class, caste, ethnicity, gender, sexuality, etc., etc. So the markers of social difference necessarily need not be national, because within the national there are differences, there are categories, there are subcategories which might be extremely different from one another. So the difference between a cultural Americanization and a national difference might be immense, no doubt about that, but sometimes the difference between each of these subcategories could be even larger. So what is foreign in terms of being important from, so coming from America, imported from another country, may be less foreign for me sometimes, because let's put it in this way. I'm, let's say, English educated. I come from an English medium school, and so Hollywood movies might not be that foreign to me. Are you getting the point? Because there might be some other established differences within my own community, where for me understanding that language will be even more foreign rather than understanding an Hollywood movie for me. So the differences within the country might be even more pronounced. The differences already, so importing from America, the question of the national difference suddenly is collapsed. So you see, so this is the whole idea of how the concept of the foreign works within the concept of the national. But the national might act as a local, and within the local we have so many subcategories. So the national is an idea which is in terms of the foreign, but the local might have even more foreign subcategories within itself. Now this is very, very important. So it is always assumed that the local is the same as the national. So in the concept of the cultural Americanization, this is the problem, that the local is also same as the national, and the national has a difference with America. So, right? But that is, as we say, might not be the point always, because within the national there might be even far more greater differences, right? While there might be considerable conflict this between each of these categories within the local, or them and the dominant culture. So let's say in India, caste would be a very important element of difference within the local. Are you getting the point? So caste might be a very, very important tool of differentiation in India. So it might be even, so the America might not be as foreign, but caste might be an even bigger problem, if you consider caste as still a problem, and of course it is. So you will see that because Americanization works within that small idea of the national difference. So the point here is, so globalization is involving the flow and ebb of homogenizing and heterogenizing forces. So what we understand now is then, between the local and the national, and the American and the national, we are considering a lot of flows. This flow is happening between the local and the global, but as we see, sometimes within the local there are also flows happening within the local. So necessarily the global does not come and take over the local always. So you have to remember this concept. The global necessarily does not overpower the local. So the local, within which, as I said, there are even more differences, far more greater differences that exist. You have to understand that the global does not decimate the local, which we have been told from time immemorial, that when the global comes, when cable TV would come, it would take over the Indian culture. The Indian culture is at risk, and I am sure you keep on hearing, let's say our languages are at risk from English, and there are from time to time different such resistance movements that you see. let's say your nameplates of your shops have to be in the local language instead of English, and I'm sure you keep on seeing those kind of resistance from the local. Now this is what I consider, this flow of the global, which tries to make everything homogenization, also faces a resistance from the local. Okay, what happens is there's a meeting point of the global and the local, there's a mingling point of the global and the local, and there are sparks that fly. What I mean about the sparks that fly is the local acts as a site of resistance. The local acts as a site of resistance to the global. This is where these clashes happen between the global and the local. So Roland Robertson in 1995 had argued about this concept of the global and the local, and he arrives at a term called globalization, where he talks about the mixture of the global and the local and the coming up of the new. So what we see is a slow acceptance of the global by the local. After the initial resistance of the global, there is a slow coming to terms with the global, because after all, the global is very, very powerful. The homogenizing forces of the global slowly take over, yet the local keeps on resisting. But after a certain point in this, the local and the global start to intermingle and create what Robertson calls as a global product, a global identity, a global culture. Globalization is the term that he uses. No, this is very, very interesting, because then he argues is the global and the local mix. Now, remember our original argument that the concept of American culture is dependent on the idea of the national difference. Here we are looking at an intermingling of the foreign and the national. So intermingling happens, so boundaries are collapsing, and what we arrive at is something called globalization. Okay, so Ian Yang, a cultural studies researcher, has interestingly then talked about, and he had theorized about this, which the very popular kung fu movies that come out of Hong Kong and the Hollywood now. If you remember, all of it started with that classic Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon movie. Mm. So he argued that this is a perfect example of this, where he talks about the success of the kung fu movies in the Western world as a mixture of Western narrative and Cantonese values. So how Cantonese values were being appropriated in a westernized Hollywood narrative form. So you have a heady mix of cocktail of kind of an identity, where you have Cantonese values which impregnate the Hollywood idiom. So Hollywood gets richer in terms of its narrative, and also Hong Kong move cinema is opened up to a new world audience. So Ian Yang studied about this kung fu movies, and he determines this, uses this Roland Robertson's concept of the globalization. So this in a way, this in a sense is the coming together of two forms of the global and the local. So what we are seeing is, increasingly we are seeing newer and newer forms of cultural hybridity. So we are calling it cultural hybridity, globalization. So we are seeing new concepts coming together. We are seeing new forms of food being created, new forms of fashion being created. There is a lot of celebration in the opening of new global routes, because you understand, it is negating that original idea of one America coming and taking over your world. It's not doing that. What it is doing is, in terms, it is a marriage between the two. It's a marriage between the, so national differences, which was considered as the iota of difference between the America and the world, has now collapsed, and what we are seeing is the American culture coming and mixing with the culture of the other local places. So the local is providing the resistance, and finally there is a marriage of these two, which we are calling a globalization. So there is a newer cultural hybridity. So we are looking at richer and richer cultural hybrid forms. Are you getting the point? Like the kung fu movies. So, richer and richer cultural hybrid forms, we are looking at newer global phenomenons. We are looking at, of course, a richer world culture, but it does not necessarily mean that the local has given up its fight. The resistance of the local is still there. Now, what does this resistance do is it creates new locals every day. So the resistance to the flow of the global still continues. So you will see a lot of protests about fashion, a lot of protests about religion. So so you will notice that there is a lot of resistance of the local against these flows of the global. You'll see there is an increase of religious fundamentalism across the world. This is nothing but this classic example of the local standing up to the global and trying to fight. Because if you, let's say, today we talk in terms of regional languages or regional culture. Let's say when we talk about in terms of northeast, there's always this talk of how do we save our own culture, how do we save our own heritage, how do we save our own languages. And this is nothing but that local trying to form a wall of resistance against the flows of the global. So this is a classic phenomenon of the Americanization versus globalization debate. This locals resistance have world over given us the re-emergence of nationalism. Okay, if there were the concepts of nationalism in colonial terms, this is a re-emergence of nationalism in terms of the American culture. There is a lot of re-emergence of searching for roots. You will look at, you will see there is a lot of people searching for their roots. Where did I come from? Who were my forefathers? And people trying to trace back their family tree, horoscope online. You will see a lot of websites which you can trace your roots, family trees, and there is a lot of re-emergence of all of these ideas of whether I am an Aryan or not, where did the Aryans come from, where the Aryans a superior tribe, and all of this nationalist fervor. There is a re-emergence. There is a lot of linguistic resistance, as I had already said. So this increase in fundamentalism across the world, which can be seen. For example, when Trump became president, if you remember, there was a lot of talk about his history. His roots were traced back to Ireland. So this tracing back is nothing but this national re-emergence of nationalism. So somewhere in Ireland, people would be very happy that one of our person has become president of the US. Although maybe he's the seventh, eighth, 10th generation person to have gone to America. So there is a re-emergence of fundamentalism in all forms, and this is the outcome of this resistance of the local to global flows, because global flows are homogenizing as well as heterogenizing at the same time. I'll stop my class here today and I will continue with the other two points of debate in the next class. Thank you.